Yes, hello, I am James Rowlands, and today it's the WNR301. As one door closes, another one opens. I am James Rowlands, and today it is a very exciting show. I am joined by a very special guest co-host at Graps of Ras. How you doing, mate? You right?
Hi, I'm alright, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. It is nice to be a part of the show.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on here, and like we said, technical issues subsiding. I mean, it's been great. Why don't you tell me a bit about yourself?
There's not really much to say, really. I'm just a 19-year-old dad that follows wrestling and decided one day to create a Twitter account and see what people talk about. Twitter community probably a better place to be, because I feel like the wrestling community as a whole is probably the most toxic. Yeah. You know, wrestling fans ruin wrestling for themselves, and I don't know, I'm quite a positive person, and whenever, something happens, I like to try and look at the bright side of things and see where you can go with it and try and change people's opinions, look at things in a better way, and, just try and make this community a better place.
Well, I think that's what the WNR have tried to do this past 5 years as well, because there's a lot of people knocking each other down, and there's not a lot of kind of building up, is there,
Oh, definitely not. Like, you look through, you look through the feed, and it's just all negative. Something will happen that's really good, for example, and everyone will be like, "No, that's shit." For example, the Raw Underground thing that's happened recently, I saw a lot of people hate on that, and I'm just thinking to myself, well, what is there to hate in it? It's something new. You've been asking for something new. Just try and make things a better place.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, and I think that's what we're seeing. That, especially with my point, is that even if it's Raw, Smackdown, AEW, Impact, a lot of people, have a go at the others for what they watch, but it is professional wrestling.
Of course it is. And, that's the whole point of Graps of Ras. We have three members. We have myself, and then a lad called Beacon who likes to input quite, he likes to input his opinion a lot. Me and him, we kind of differ. I'm more of like, your old school kind of guy, and he's more of like an independent kind of guy. So he's got that modern mindset, whereas me, I like to think I have quite an old head when it comes to wrestling. And then obviously your third member, we've got Cammy. He's very similar to me. Me and him have a lot of similar thoughts. When it comes to everything altogether, like for example, I think modern NWA Power, it is fantastic. I think it's one of the best things around when it's obviously being filmed, when it's actually on. That's one of my favourite promotions.
Yeah. And, well, I think this is the thing, because when we started, it was a case of kind of having someone that didn't know anything about wrestling, and someone kind of knew a little bit, and then kind of me who kind of was just following it as much as they possibly could. And I think through like I said, 300 episodes, I've realised now that there's, with Dan and the scheduling, there's not a lot else I can teach him, or or what we've seen and what we've shown, and it's to try and the next few, especially the next maybe 100 episodes, so is to give other people a chance who have got different ideas as well, and I think that's what the exciting thing is to be able to sit with someone and speak to them, and maybe it's outside your bubble a little bit and you might get a little bit uncomfortable, but I think that's exciting.
I think I will always say this. I always have and I always will do. I think the best thing about wrestling is the debate that comes along with it, because nobody will ever have the same opinion on the same stuff. One of the best things to do one of the best things to happen with wrestling is the debate that comes along with it. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. Everyone's going to think different things. Like I said before with the Raw Underground, everybody has an opinion on that. There's not one person on this planet that watches wrestling that will have nothing to say about it. Everybody will have an opinion on it. And I think one of the special things about this culture is the fact that you can talk about that. It brings up, it's a new topic to talk about. And there's a new topic every single week on every single show, and it's fresh. It's always fresh.
I think what we're going to try and do as well is the fact is that you can have difference of opinions when it comes to wrestling, but you don't have to be harsh. You can say, right, you've got different opinion than I, but I accept that, as opposed to going, you're wrong, you don't know how fucking wrong you are, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. For example, again, going back to this Raw Underground, the dancers, the strippers. What's your take on the dancers and strippers?
I think for me, this day and age, I don't mind it if you've got the male equivalent. Like I say, if you've got if you treat everybody the kind of same in that way, and when the women are wrestling or whatever it is, and you have the men strippers, that's fine. If you don't, then that's where there's a problem with it.
I agree with that. The way I look at it is, people want the Attitude Era back, and I feel like this Raw Underground is very similar to what you'd get back then. I love it, mate. I think the strippers being there adds so much to the atmosphere. It adds so much to the culture of Raw Underground. It's meant to be this grungy underground fight club. So why not have strippers? Why not have dancers up on the bar? If you want to have male ones there for equality, then that's perfectly fine. But a lot of people were complaining about, how far the women's evolution's come. Yeah. And, this revolution of promoting women's wrestling rather than, your bra and panties matches, rather than, your stripteases and your bikini contests. But at the same time, these are dancers. Dancing is a profession. I don't look at that anymore than someone would look at a wrestler.
But I think they've done it for a reason. I think if you look back at TNA when they had the women dancers in the cage as they were making their entrance, of course it was being TNA. They were trying to, push the boundaries there, and I think it's the kind of the same thing now. It's something that will get people talking, if they agree with it or not. And I think that's the clever thing with what they've done. But like I said, we're going to get onto that in a second. So we'll start the show now, and it's going to be the state of pro wrestling, and we're going to be looking at WWE, AEW, NJPW, Impact, and more. And today with a new co-host comes a new game, and it is Hit or Miss. Now, much like Masturbate, we'll decide if it's a hit or miss, and we'll also grade each show. And the shows are Raw, Smackdown, Impact, AEW, and NXT. And let's get started. And Monday Night Raw. And you were talking about Raw Underground. So what is it about Raw Underground you love so much?
It becomes different. Raw is a 3-hour show, and a lot of people have complaints about Raw being a 3-hour show for so long. People saying, let's bring back to the 2 hours. Well, with Raw Underground there, it kind of adds that different variety to the show, and it makes casual Raw an hour less. It becomes a shorter show. It becomes more in the casual Raw. You've got your wrestling on the casual Raw, and then this Raw Underground becomes this. It's an underground fight club. It becomes grungy. It becomes dirty. I want to see more about it. I want to see that really pushed. I want to see it as like an underground proving ground. I think it adds so much. Like, for example, Baba Sunday or Dabba-Kato, what he's going by now. He's become a star in the last 2 or 3 weeks just purely because of this. People will look at him now and think, what, he could kill someone, he could take someone's head off. And I feel like that becomes fresh now. It's a new face. Arturo Ruas showed up. I want to see him now with nunchucks. It adds so many different. It adds a variety to the show that you would have seen so many years ago, and something that we haven't seen for so long. And difference always good, even if it is like a refreshment of an older factor of a show. For example, like I just really like it. Like it's different, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is that apparently it's been Shane McMahon who's come up with the ideas, and at the moment, WWE are pretty high on what he's been talking about. And of course, he's always had a kind of affiliation for either UFC or even ECW back in the day. So it's interesting to think that and like I said, it is something different. Is there a problem though? We talk about as well the 3 hours of Raw. Is it just kind of going the way of Nitro did back in the day, with it's just too long for anybody to really sit down and enjoy?
I don't think so. I think people don't like it because they don't like sitting through a 3-hour show anymore. And I think, in my opinion, when I sit down and watch a 3-hour show, the thing that does me, and the thing that makes it boring for me is, the ad breaks. That's the only thing that does it for me. But when you've got a different variety there, you kind of forget about that. The ad break becomes a break. It's like, what's going to happen next? It's not like, here we go, another ad break. For example, you think about Smackdown from, your 2004, 2005. You've got your Smackdown 6. Your Smackdown 6 and you've got your Cruiserweight division. It's something fresh. It's something different. You watch Smackdown at that point because you see something different. You see something new. You're watching that because it's different to what Raw is. And I feel like right now that's what Raw is. It's different to SmackDown. It's got its own standpoint. It's got its own, you look at Raw now and you think, I'm going to see something here that I'm not going to see on SmackDown. And I feel like despite a 3rd hour, that doesn't matter anymore because you've got something fresh, you've got something new. You know that you're going to be watching something that you're not going to see on a Friday.
Yeah. But I think for me, my problem is maybe not the 3 hours or the adverts. It's the constant repeating of what they do on their programs, and I can't sit there and see that 3 or 4 times in either the same hour or an hour later. It's like we're watching it. I know we are, so we don't really need to be completely told again and again. And I just feel that's filling time for them. That it's going to take up 15 minutes of re-showing what has already happened on the show.
But then at the same time, what I can argue with there, right? Again, I'm a 19-year-old lad, so I cannot put myself in the position of someone that lived through the Attitude Era because I weren't even born then. But being someone that's so passionate about wrestling,
go on, sorry.
So passionate for the business and someone that enjoys wrestling as a whole, I'll take my time to go out and I started watching Raw from when Brian Pillman died from the show where they did like the memorial for him. I started watching from there again as a hobby, and I watched it from there. And for example, your Stone Cold Steve Austin storylines, like they were brought up maybe every 15 minutes, like what's going to happen with this? Can you remember when this happened? Can you remember when this happened? And it felt like a bigger deal, and I feel like that's how it could be now. People don't tend to like it because the storyline isn't as interesting to them.
Well, it's like the poisoning, isn't it? I mean, that I was watching that bit, and 3 or 4 times they keep going back to it. And my problem is with the announcers. Well, don't get me wrong, I like Byron Saxton and Tom or Todd Phillips, but it's in it, I think, too serious sometimes. And I think one of them needs to be there to, like a Bobby Heenan type or a King type to go, no, hang on a minute, let's not be so serious, because the way they're doing there, and unfortunately, he's passed out and it doesn't look good, because no one is buying that nowadays, are they?
See, that's where I think Byron Saxton fits so well. I don't care what people say about Byron Saxton. He's a saint to this business, and he could be one of the best commentators in the world if you just let him be like goofy guy on commentary that plays kind of he could be a heel or a face. He could be a goofy heel that just tries to throw everything off, like, he got poisoned because he's an idiot. Maybe he got poisoned because he's eating this or he's eating that. Just try and make fun of it a little bit.
I think
if he's a face, he can proper throw shade at heel. He can be a special character.
So I think this is the thing with Raw. Has it got enough hours to actually, to fill out the 3 hours in itself as well? When we talk about who's actually on the show and who they use, has it been a case since the kind of the COVID thing to kind of use the same 10 to 15 stars on every show? I mean, that probably make more sense because then you're not kind of sharing it up a little bit more. But is there that name talent that is there,
Through COVID, yes, because I haven't seen many people talk about this, and I feel like it needs to be stated. When COVID's been around, there's been no fans there, and when there has been fans there, there've been actual performance center recruits. So that means then that the crowd isn't as organic, but that also means then that they can put someone like Apollo Crews on the TV for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and normally where we get quite a silent reaction, they can have that unorganic crowd, like slapping on the plexiglass, cheering for him. And he gets over just like that, you can, like the Edge and Orton match. I feel like if that match were performed in front of a live crowd at Backlash, it wouldn't have got the same. What's it called? Reaction.
Yeah.
On the internet, because you're able to promote your own crowd reaction. You're able to push your own crowd reaction and say like, well, you're meant to be cheering for this guy, or you're meant to be booing this guy. And I feel like it works. They can create their own stars through their own crowd rather than where hecklers in the front row saying like, oh, you're boring, all you do is smile.
My problem is, I mean, I'm not going to have a go just at the fans, but I will. It's like sometimes with the crowds, they're trying to be too smart for their own goods, aren't they? And it's kind of,
yeah, definitely.
You take away from the action. And again, I don't want to say just because I'm in a crowd at the O2 or, whatever it is, I find the London crowd and the English fans a little bit more respectful of the action rather than trying to get themselves over and chanting someone else's name during a match. You know what I mean? I think that's what we've seen recently, and I guess like if you pay your money, you can do what you want. But I think it's kind of like we've seen it recent times where with John Cena, it's cool to boo him. The same with Roman Reigns. And that's what I think good with McIntyre at the moment, that you haven't got a chance for the fans to kind of go, oh, these guys being shoved down their throat, much like Braun Strowman on Smackdown as well,
I feel like Drew McIntyre would still be over now in front of a main crowd. I feel like the Royal Rumble it was his night. I actually said the minute that he came out, rather than just eliminating Lesnar from the Rumble, the minute he came out and said he's become a star right now because of the crowd reaction, because of the way he just walked down the ring, because of the way that Lesnar put him over. Lesnar wouldn't take his eyes off him, and then when McIntyre got into the ring and eliminated him, you just had this massive roar from the crowd, and then the night after he got this massive roar from the crowd. He wins the Rumble, got this massive roar from the crowd, and ever since then, everyone's just really gone for him. Even when he had a little moment, like he had a little period between the Rumble and Mania where he weren't doing too much, and people were still really behind him. He managed to get the 3-2-1 Claymore kick over, and I feel like that really helped for him. And the promos that he'd be delivering, if someone like your Rollins or your Reigns had cut the exact same promo, they'd be booed because it'd be considered cheesy, maybe a bit corny. But McIntyre's delivery is perfect. I feel like without a doubt, right now he is the face of the entire company. He's your figurehead, and they've been missing something like that now for a good couple of years. He's what they wanted Reigns to be, and obviously, unfortunately, Reigns can't be there at the minute. But I feel like McIntyre he's really stepped up. He is the figurehead now. He could easily be the next John Cena, the next Stone Cold, the next Rock. He's got that potential now.
The thing is about McIntyre, I mean, everybody who listens to the show will know my love for Drew, and I used to watch him on Superstars when he was losing there and watching his matches and then getting released, and managing to see him on the independent here and having a conversation with him, and he, even at that point in time, like, he knew he was going to go back and he'd get another chance. And I think that's what makes it such a great story. Like, even with Eddie Guerrero, kind of like, when he got fired, but then he came back and it was just a different level. I think we've seen that with McIntyre, and there's so much more he can give as well. Like, even in matches with the moves he can do, we've not even seen a quarter of. I think that's what's really exciting. And like I said, it's a shame with the fans not being there, but the reaction he's going to get, especially, I don't want him to lose the title anytime soon, but I think he definitely deserves that kind of reaction in front of a proper crowd or winning the championship. And I think that is going to be a moment, like we said, his Rumble moment is going to be unbelievable. And he's still young and he's still going to have so many opportunities, unless they completely drop the ball, which they haven't done, to WWE's credit, or this year already,
In my opinion, and this might, I'm not too sure what you're going to think about this, but in my opinion, this is the best the WWE has been in. I think the pandemic era will be considered one of the greatest eras ever, because of the way that they've managed to boost stars, managed to create stars, make things interesting. Each show right now has different interesting storylines that actually has people interested in. People put on Smackdown and think, I'm looking forward to what's going to happen between Alexa Bliss and Braun because of what happened last week, or the thing's going to show up. I'm interested in that. The Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, AJ Styles being the Intercontinental Champion, people wanting to tune into the show just to watch these little things. And then on Raw, you have, the likes of MVP, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, really making a name for himself. In my opinion, MVP is probably the best promo in the world right now. Then you also have the likes of, your Orton feuding with everybody, going back to that Legend Killer gimmick. Again, he's probably the best heel in the world right now. People are coming to watch these two shows specifically because there's different things going on. It's really interesting right now, and probably the best booked shows that they've had for Raw and SmackDown anyway in a long time.
Well, I think the problem with like we said, everybody's got when the best time was, and I think with the Attitude Era, don't get me wrong, I was watching it during the Attitude Era. I was managing to flick over to see a bit of WCW during that time as well, and it was incredible. But I think from a in-ring standpoint, it wasn't on the level that it is kind of nowadays. I think obviously nowadays it's a strength of depth, but that's WWE's fault, and this is something that goes back to 2006, 2007. When you look at people like MVP or Mr. that were coming up, Carlito, another guy, Chris Masters, they never went anywhere with these. They never created new stars. You have your Intercontinental Championship level, and then there's more IC champions and US champions that have been released rather than becoming WWE champion, and that's the wrong way it works. They've not built anybody up, and now we're finally seeing it with McIntyre, Strowman to a lesser extent, because like I said, he was in that position. Hopefully they can actually build stars rather than going, get to that level and we'll just call back, Undertaker or Triple H for another match at Mania, because you're not at that level yet, and I think we've seen that even with The Miz. I think The Miz could be a main event, the same with Morrison, but just not getting the opportunity because it's like, oh no, we're going to keep you at that level. And I hope with McIntyre they can say, right, let's put him on the John Cena level, because who else has been there in the last 10, 15 years? It'd be no one really,
In my opinion, I think the one thing that creates stars is character, and I feel like a lot of wrestlers are really happy with the way that their character is, and they haven't exactly got much character. I feel like everybody's got a personality, but what makes people stand out? I would say Ricochet. Ricochet's great in the ring. He can do things that nobody's ever seen before, but what's he there for? What's he doing? Like, why does he want to be there?
It's all, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's all about kind of character development, but there's got to be a reason. Like when Stone Cold said, if you're not here to be WWF champion, you don't have to be there to be champion, but you've got to have what gets you going. It's like someone like Kevin Owens. He's talked about his family. He's providing for his, wife and son. That's his goal. And we know a little bit more about him, and he's one of the most over people because we've actually looked into the character a little bit and got a bit more development than we've had for the past couple of years,
Something as well that I really miss from regular showing is jobbers. Why aren't jobbers a bigger thing anymore? Like, I know people love, the smaller guys, and but take Mojo Rawley for example. What is he right now? Like, they try and make him so serious. He had this weird face paint. He was cutting some phenomenal promos in the mirror, to be fair to him. In my opinion, they were some of the best promos of the years. Like, the vignettes that he was doing were fantastic, but he didn't really do anything after that. They tried to make him so serious. Now, take that character, take that charisma, and he's a walking Monster Energy drink. Why can't he be something like that? Why can't you? Can you remember when Simon Dean would be trying to sell his protein shakes?
Yeah.
He'd have full segments like trying to sell protein shakes, and then obviously Stone Cold got involved, and that put Simon Dean over, and he had Maven alongside him. It were a fantastic segment, Stone Cold's there selling him to drink a beer. Simon Dean doesn't want to drink a beer because he's too happy with the way his body is. And then he gets down to do some press-ups. Well, imagine if you've got Mojo Rawley sat inside the ring, or he's sat backstage with a little table with a black cloth over the top of it, and he's trying to sell a hype energy drink. He's got a motive to be on that show then. He wants to sell his drink, he wants to earn some money, and he's a big guy, so he can go in the ring. He can defend his company. But that gives him a reason to be on the show.
Yeah, but I think this is a problem. You need the kind of the reason to be, but even the kind of, talk about the roster and the strength and depth. There's some guy, like someone like Aleister Black, who was possibly the coolest coolest guy going in NXT, and the way his character was and what he could do, and with that Black Mass kick, he could. That's why I always thought he'd be a perfect Money in the Bank winner, because you knew all it'd take is one kick and he'd cash in. And now it's like you hear the rumors of Vince not being happy, he's going to change character, but he never did anything. They teamed with Ricochet when he first moved up, and then you get in his eye taken out by Rollins and Murphy. You're thinking, what are they actually doing? And a lot of other guys. For me personally, like calling up guys, you're thinking, out of all the people in NXT, I didn't think he'd be the one that be moved up. And like someone like Angel Garza or something like that, I was a little bit, okay, right, that's fair enough. So. But again, if it's working, I think that's fine. But for me at the moment, I don't think there's enough strength in depth. And I think the characters that they've got on top are characters that have been around for quite a while. We talk about Seth Rollins or Randy Orton, even a Rey Mysterio. I just feel it's, do you think it's right that they're going to have Dominic in a match at SummerSlam?
I do actually, yeah. I'm really excited for it, to be honest.
Come on.
I can't tell you why. I can't tell you where this excitement's come from, but I don't know. I think he's paid his dues. Watching him in 2005, the custody of Dominic, what a match. And then, get 2 side-by-side falls, and I don't know. I were always a big Eddie fan. I was always a big Ray fan. So, despite how stupid that match were, I always loved it. I loved every single second of it, especially when I was younger. And now I'm seeing Dominic by himself, as big as he is, actually going to have a match with someone on a big show like this. I don't know. Let's put it this way. Dominic he's been booked to say, he's never had a match before. He's barely ever had any training. Doesn't that make him an underdog? And that's exactly what Rey Mysterio was. Rey Mysterio was, he's a 5'6" or something like that. He's about 5'6". He's dead skinny. He's a cruiserweight, and he would take on the likes of the Big Show, Brock Lesnar, Batista, Triple H. He was an underdog because he were in the land of the giants, being so small. Well, isn't Dominic Mysterio now in the land of experience with no experience? He becomes an underdog. He becomes exactly what he becomes exactly what Rey Mysterio is, and I really like that. I feel like they can go a long way with it.
Well, my problem with that is like you've seen it in the past with like David Flair, or I mean even Shane McMahon. Kind of being put in that match, and it's saying, okay, you if it's a one-off match, fine, but if it's a position on the card, then it's just going to kind of cause resentment, because you talk about paying dues, which maybe Dominic has outside of WWE, but when you come in, you have to kind of, work your way up, so to speak. And I think with what might help him and what might hinder him is the fact that, Rey Mysterio's his dad, because he might hit 619, but he's never going to be what his father was. So he can maybe introduce a different style that might work. But I just feel like on the biggest show of the summer, Dominic involved, I don't know, I'd much rather maybe have him in the corner of someone like an Aleister Black, and then you can be like, right, Aleister Black versus Seth Rollins. Oh my, what will Murphy and Dominic do at ringside? Or have a tag team match?
I can see what you mean. I don't personally have anything against what they're doing now, so I can't really say much against it. But I understand what you're saying. I understand that, the point that you're coming from. Talking about Aleister Black then, because you seem to be really high in him. If he's not actually doing much now, what would you personally do to make him become this big superstar? Like, personally for you, what would you do?
What, with Dominic?
No, with Aleister Black.
If I was going to make Aleister Black a big, it would be simple yet effective, and it would be outside the box. You have Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman would say, Brock Lesnar has dominated for 10, 15 years, but I've got another guy, and this one's Aleister Black. And Black wouldn't have to say a word, just looks menacing. And Heyman says, right, he could be put in squash matches to begin with, maybe, like I said, a US title, Intercontinental title run. And Heyman just speaking for Black. All Black has to do is come out, do his cool entrance, look good, Black mass kick, job done. And then you can play between Lesnar, because Lesnar's quite good with this as well, kind of looking over his shoulder and thinking, well, how dangerous is Aleister Black? And then obviously, eventually leading the match between the two. And then, you can have Heyman either costing Lesnar and going with Black, which would make Aleister Black an even bigger star, or have Heyman costing Black the match, Lesnar, and then you've got a pissed off babyface who, he will say, look, I'm a man of few words, but my actions speak louder in the ring. I think that would be something that they could definitely look at. Or just a guy like, when's the last time we had a guy who just didn't take any nonsense? Like the best thing about Stone Cold, when he come out, if you didn't like what you're saying, he'd give you a stunner. You imagine someone like Aleister Black coming out and people talking to him, he's sick of it, Black mass kick. I think that's something that we're missing at the moment in wrestling as well,
I feel like Kevin Owens would play that role really well.
Yeah, exactly. Come out, give him a stunner. As long as people didn't say then, oh, he's a Stone Cold imitator. Because I think this is the thing. Owens has got different layers that I don't think even Stone Cold had in certain times,
I feel like Aleister Black would be much better off with Zelina Vega on his side. Like, picture Edge and Lita in your head, and then side by side with that, picture Aleister Black and Zelina Vega. I feel like them two partnerships are, they share a lot of similarities, and I feel like Black would be able to give off a bit of attitude, and with Zelina Vega being a bit ghetto as well, I feel like she's always great on the mic. She's always great with the manager work. So imagine if them two were together. You have Aleister Black wearing his black shirt, a bit unbuttoned at the top with his suit pants, and he's coming out with Zelina Vega by his side. I feel like that's like a match made in heaven.
Do you know what? Exactly. But I think especially what we discussed a couple of minutes, there's so much opportunity for someone like Aleister Black. You know, there's so many ideas, and I don't understand how someone can go up to him creative and go, do you know what? We actually haven't got anything for you at the moment. And that's not having to go kind of the way WWE do things or whatever it is. But I think with him, there's a star talent there, isn't there? You know, you see him, you go, he actually looks like a star.
I completely agree with you, and I feel like at the minute, I don't think there'll be much for him. But I'm telling you, in about 3 to 5 years, he will be probably the biggest star on the show. Mm-hmm. And that's simply because the best characters are the characters that you can't book for yourself. And that's why the Attitude Era was so special, because everyone had a character. You can't just sit there and say, well, what if this guy did this? What if this guy did this? It's all in your imagination, like, oh, well, what's he actually going to do next? You can't sit there and say to yourself, he is going to do this. You know, a guy turns heel and, you know, the all reliable promo is, oh, it's the fans' fault, or I've done it because I'm not respected. But then you get someone like, for example, The Undertaker, who's got this massive character, over-the-top character that, you know, you don't really know what's going to happen. Same with The Fiend. This is what's so special about The Fiend. Where was The Fiend 5 years ago? Every 3 years ago. You were losing every single week. He had a great promo, but he was losing every single week. And now you have The Fiend, who's actually quite a hard character booked by yourself. Vince has actually got trust in Bray. He's got trust in Bray for creative. I'm pretty sure. Is it true that Bray Wyatt helps other people with promos backstage?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those who, like I said, he knows everything about his character, and he's there to help people out. And we've seen.
That's what I mean. I feel like a lot about paying your dues nowadays is spending time on the roster, getting hold of what wrestling is on the higher stage, and eventually earning the boss's trust. And I feel like that's what Bray did, and that's why he's become who he is. I feel like that's why Kofi Kingston is who he is now. I feel like that's why Brock is as big as Brock is.
Well, this is the thing. I think you need, and I think with all great wrestling characters we've seen, it's their own personality turned up. And I think obviously with The Fiend, it's not like that. But, you know, Bray's come up with this idea. They kind of let him alone in this creative process. And he's come out with something that's knocked out of the park. And I think that would say to other stars or other superstars, you know, even if McMahon is not saying to you, oh, come up with something. If you're coming up with ideas yourself and going, this is my character, this is what I want to do, then they're going to probably, you know, 9 times out of 10 go, do you know what? Let's give it a go. If it doesn't work, we'll just scrap it. I don't think there's enough of that. I don't think there's enough of wrestlers now saying, hang on a minute. Like you said, it's too comfortable. They're performing either on main event or on Raw. They've got their money and they're saying, do you know what? I don't want to rock the boat too much. I'd rather be here than anywhere else. And I think that's why what we're seeing. I'm not having to go at Dolph Ziggler, but Ziggler's a guy that I think could have had multiple title reigns. You know, you talk about not the next Edge, but a guy, you know, multiple time champion as a heel or face. And either it would be WWE saying, oh, because you got injured, we're not going to give you a chance. But I don't think he ever thought, right, he's quite comfortable. He can go from Mandy Rose to a mid-card feud. Whereas I feel like he could, if he wanted to, go, no, I can be a main eventer. I don't know what you think about that.
I feel like he could do to some extent. I feel like Ziggler's miles better off as a face than what he is a heel. He's run with The Miz. We're in 2017, 2018 for the IC title.
2017,
That was fantastic. It was so good. What were it? The match where if Ziggler lost, he had to retire for it?
Yes, No Mercy, yeah. It was absolutely unbelievable, yeah.
It was an unbelievable story. And that match, I remember actually sitting there and just thinking to myself, he's not going to win this, is he? He's really going to retire. I was sat there just thinking to myself, like, he's had a really good run, hasn't he? And then he ended up winning the title, and I was like, you know what? Fair play. Really, really well done. They've really put some effort into this story. It's really made it interesting. The promos between the two of these two, they've been so captivating. I've been interested from the start to the finish, and it worked. It really worked, and I feel like Ziggler can do that as a babyface. As a heel, however, I feel like everything's kind of repetitive. He's just kind of the same person.
Well, it's a Kurt Hennig / kind of Heartbreak Kid rip-off in a way of, you know, I'm better than you and this is what I do. I don't get me wrong, I don't mind that, but like I said, like we're saying, the emotion that Ziggler can have is, I think that's what makes some wrestlers so great. You can feel sorry for him, or you know, it's like that cash in when he won the world title. It's top 3, top 5 pops of all time, because everybody in the crowd was so happy, and to get that range of emotion, it is quite difficult as well,
Yeah, of course. I feel like as a babyface, he's so good. As a heel, I just kind of want to see him be a parody of Motley Crue.
Yeah.
And I feel it's quite repetitive what he does. I want to see more from him. Again, it's no shade on him. I think it's fantastic. It's just personally not my taste.
Well, I think the thing is, throughout, you kind of pick favourites, throughout the years. Well, I did anyway. And I think Ziggler was on there, with like CM Punk and McIntyre. I like to kind of pick out a couple of guys and think, right, there's potential for you. I also picked out Mr. Kennedy, which didn't help out. But, there's certain guys you think, oh, they've definitely got, potential. They've got something about them. And like I said, in recent years, they've never kind of jumped into main event. And hopefully now, during this time, we'll see a few guys, they talk about building future stars. Let's hope they actually do, Right, anyway, so we're talking about Raw, and just last thing, I want to talk about gang warfare on Raw, because obviously we got the Hurt Locker, we've got the Vega, Andrade, Garza, Murphy and Rollins, and we've got the new group Retribution. What are your thoughts on them?
On Retribution?
Yeah.
I can't say Retribution.
Excuse me.
Controversial, but in my opinion, they're better than the Nexus.
Oh, fucking hell. Right, go on then.
Here we go. I did say I'll be bringing.
When the Nexus first come and destroyed the Ring and John Cena, because I'd watched a little bit of NXT, but I was like, what is going on here? Amazing, because you've never seen 7 guys kind of destroying the roster the way they did. I was so excited about that angle up until SummerSlam. And then as soon as John Cena, with that DDT on the concrete, popped back up again, I thought, that's them done. And again, Wade Barrett is another guy who looked like a main eventer, future world champion without any doubt, and they just dropped the ball. So I think Nexus, I was really excited, and then it was just like pulled away, and it was like, nah. Yeah.
Did you not ever notice, though, that whenever the Nexus were around, they were never team, they were never called stars ever. They were called rookies. Every single week, they were the rookies of NXT. The rookies. You look at Retribution, the biggest complaint I've seen people have about them is their height. You get someone like Braun coming there, and he'll throw them all around. You get someone like Reigns coming there, he'll throw them all around. They're too small. But the Nexus were rookies. The Nexus were meant to be shit, so to speak. They were meant to be people that had the number. They meant to have the numbers game, but not the actual wrestling game. They were rookies. They were from NXT. They were on a game show. They were just rookies. They were there. They were rookies of professional wrestlers on the main roster, as it were. So whenever I looked at the Nexus, I never really saw them as an actual threat. I just saw them as a bit of a gang. Whereas Retribution, you see them come in, and especially, I feel like the pandemic helped them because they never bleep them out when they're cutting promos. Rather than in front of a live crowd, and you can't really do that. I feel like it's fantastic the way that they've been, but they're messing around with the production. They're messing around with Molotovs, and then they're actually coming in attacking people, and they've got fucking chainsaws cutting down ropes, and they're breaking up the ring just like the Nexus did. And I feel like that has the exact same impact now as what it did then. I feel like the only thing that Nexus did better was the timing. I feel like back then, everyone kind of knew at that point wrestling is fake. Everybody knew, even your kids. Wrestling were fake. But then, they come and rip up the ring, and you see these massive hard floorboards, and people say like, they do actually land on something quite hard there. There's not much bad in there, is there? People start to think of it that way, and that's when they become a bit more of a threat. That's when people start to think, you know what, wrestling's pretty dangerous, isn't it? And I feel like when Retribution do that now, it's not quite the same as what the Nexus did. That's the only thing I think the Nexus have like the upper hand on. But Retribution, there's loads of them. Obviously, like we saw last night on Smackdown, there's more of them. They said that on commentary, it looks like there's more of them. So they've got some tall, they've got some small, they've got some women, they've got some guys. And I feel like there's more to do with that. I feel like, especially with reports saying that like they're literally there to create a change in products anyway. it seems to me like they're going to have more of an impact than the Nexus did anyway. In my opinion, the Nexus, like I said before, the Nexus were just, they were just rookies. Yeah, when there's 7 of them around the ring at one time, the one person in the ring is obviously going to get beat down. But what happens when it becomes a 7-on-7? This is why, the Nexus versus never really bothered me. I mean, it should have done, but it never really bothered me because they are rookies. You're not going to get a rookie main event star, a main roster star in a one-on-one match. I never understood that. I never understand why people will think that when they're just being booked as rookies. If you want to make them something special, then have Michael Tarver have one-on-one matches. Make at the time Skip Sheffield have one-on-one matches where they're actually winning, they're actually beating mid-card guys who are actually coming up.
But this is a problem, though, with, like I said, the problem with groups this past, however many years, is they have such a strong start and then don't actually follow through. I would think the Whites you could argue about. I feel the Shield are the only group that have been treated with the right respect of what a group should be when they come in and kind of run roughshod, but then have to pick up victories. Like you said, to make them an actual threat, you have to beat some people. And to pick up victories over guys who have been around the roster makes more sense. My only problem for Retribution would be is either they still go around the hoodies or they reveal themselves and then they're just treading ground again as a kind of mid-card group. If you want to make a huge impact, you have them dominating and picking up victories over guys and winning championships. Otherwise, what's the point of a new group,
Oh, I completely agree with you there. I feel like once Retribution have actually revealed themselves and you see who's, the actual members, people get behind it more. When everyone was saying, like, oh, too small, isn't one of the names rumoured to be Tommaso? I mean, people kind of forget Ciampa is a cruiserweight. He is a small guy. So if people are going to complain now that they're too small and, it's Ciampa who takes the mask off, people ain't going to be saying the same then, are they? Like, people are just pointing out problems in my opinion for the sake of pointing out problems because it's a cool thing to do. You look at Retribution right now and it's something fresh, like I was saying before, it's something fresh, something new. The Nexus, they were decent, they were good. I enjoyed the Nexus, but like I said, they were booked as rookies. Retribution are booked as thugs, they're booked as people that are coming in trying to take over the show, and I respect that. I respect how different the booking side is, and I don't know. I think Retribution pushes it over the edge for me, just purely because they're not booked as rookies. They're booked as people that have the numbers game, but they're also booked as people that can stand up a fight with someone.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there, and I think this is the thing. If they watch Retribution, if they start picking, and I think that it will matter. All right, last thing about Raw then is talk about, do TV ratings. Do ratings actually matter? Do you? I've had this discussion with so many people. Do you look at TV ratings and go, well, Raw got 1.7. I'm not going to watch that next week. Or do you see it and they got a 2.1? You go, I'm definitely going to watch that. Do they have any bearing whatsoever in what wrestling shows you watch?
Not at all. Not a chance. Not a chance. Let's put it this way. Raw had the worst rating for so long, maybe 2 weeks ago. The week after, they have Raw Underground. They have, strippers on Raw Underground. They have Retribution show up. This big stack show, everything's going on. Everything's really good. You have Randy Orton coming up doing some of the best work he's ever done. And the ratings are still quite low compared to what they were before. I mean, they might have gone up maybe 0.2, but, it's not much of a difference. And if a show is going to be that good, like I said before, I think WWE's been the best it's been in a very long time. And the ratings are still that low. I feel like it's just because of the way that wrestling is nowadays. Back then, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have, dirt sheets. You didn't have, journalists that'll, spoil shows for you in advance. You didn't have rumours. You didn't have anything like that. You got what you saw.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but I was saying, like, to try and explain. So, when I used to watch Raw, it used to be on a Friday night on Sky Sports. So,
yeah.
4 or 5 days to actually watch the program, and then when Smackdown was on, it was on like a Saturday night. And I can't believe now, I can't fathom, if I was a young kid, whatever it was, 14, 15, and I had all this access to, watch stuff live and go on my tablet and watch New Japan and AEW. I mean, I wouldn't have seen Sunlight. It was just I can't get my head around it nowadays, of even back then with how the ratings were. It's people who stuck by the kind of, or waited and didn't hear spoilers and stuff like that. It's not possible now. So maybe some people are going, oh well, I go to work on a Tuesday and it gets ruined for me or whatever it is, so I don't watch it. Maybe I don't know, but
yeah,
for me,
that's what I mean. Like, there's so much more access to finding what a show is this time. People stream shows. A lot of people will use different websites to watch Raw or SmackDown, and that doesn't actually, get added onto the rating. Back then, you think about the 90s, how high the ratings were. That was because, one, the Attitude Era was probably the peak of wrestling. I don't think it'll ever top that. I feel like now, though, especially now, there's more ways of watching it. There's more ways of finding out rumours. There's more way of finding out what happens behind the scenes, what happens 2 minutes before a show, 2 minutes after a show. It's almost as if we're in the business when we're not. And I feel like when people feel like that, they feel like they're too big to watch it. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were saying like, all they do is just watch the highlights the next day, and they can judge a show off that. And I was just thinking, so you're watching the show, that's not part of the ratings. So the ratings don't really matter, in my opinion. If ratings matter in the sense of trying to keep the show on the air, obviously. But besides that, I wouldn't really worry about ratings too much. Like I said before, I think it's been the best it has been in a very long time at the minute, and the ratings don't kind of explain that. Like, in my opinion, the greatest part of my favorite era is the Ruthless Aggression era. I love that era. I thought it had everything. I thought it had shades of Attitude Era, the shades of Golden Era, and it even has shades of what wrestling is like today. Wrestling with more, I feel like that was the most advanced part of wrestling. I actually prefer a technical wrestling match from 2004 than I do from 2020.
Well, like I said, 2004 is when I mean, because JBL's title run and stuff like that. But it's like 2003 was such, like, Survivor Series 2003 is one of my favourite pay-per-views because you've just got so much star power and so many great matches. And it's like, I think, like you said, the Ruthless Aggression era did so much because it's probably the last time they actually built proper stars as well. It's the last time you talk about your Randy Ortons, your Lesnar's, and your Cena's, all Batista, all coming from that point. And I think that was vital. Attitude Era was, don't get me wrong, really, really successful. But if you didn't create those new stars in the Ruthless Aggression era, then there would be WWE would be in more trouble. And I think the reason why they're in a little bit of trouble now is because they've not built stars this past 10 years, and it's coming back to kind of bite them a little bit as well.
Of course. And when, like, the thing that does it for me is when I'm absolutely fine with bringing back veterans or bringing back legends for a big show. I've got nothing against that personally, because when I was a kid, I enjoyed seeing these big names come back for matches. In fact, the first WrestleMania I ever stayed up to watch live was 2009, WrestleMania 25, and I got to see Undertaker, Shawn, and I absolutely love that match. To this day, it's probably my favourite wrestling match of all time. But then at the same time, I really enjoyed seeing someone like Ricky Steamboat show up.
Yes.
Like, I enjoy stuff like that. I enjoy seeing veterans come in. I enjoy seeing legends come in. But at the same time, I feel like the veteran, the legend, cannot go over every single time. And that's just where it does it for me.
Yeah.
I watched wrestling from the Ruthless Aggression era. You have Hulk Hogan come in, and you have Roddy Piper come in, and they're not winning in every match. I mean, Hogan, you can probably say differently, but any other legend that came in back then, they would put people over all the time, every single time. And like when we're at 2018, 2017 maybe, the Headbangers came back, and I feel like even though they're not exactly a big name, they're still legends, and they've come back and they've managed to put people over. And I enjoy stuff like that. I want to see good names come back. It's a nice nostalgia feeling. I just don't want to see them win everything.
But it's meant to be the passing of the torch, and even go back to kind of like WrestleMania 3 with Andre and Hogan. It was the fact of Hogan beat Andre. It was the passing of the torch moment. Have we seen that? In recent times as well. That's the kind of thing that we're dealing with. I'll tell you a funny story about WrestleMania 25. I stayed up and watched it with a friend, Jared, who used to do the show. Okay. And he stayed up until the opening promo, the promo for the Undertaker Michaels match, and he fell asleep. He then missed the greatest wrestling match in history and woke up for the Randy Orton Triple H main event. So I did try and wake him, but what can you do?
Again, though, it's stuff like that, it's little things in matches. I feel like you don't have to have a 5-star match every single match on the card. I feel like that ruins 5-star matches. I like moments just as much as I like matches. For example, the Edge Cena Big Show match wasn't fantastic. It wasn't a great match. It was a good match, but it wasn't a great match. But something that everyone will always remember that is Cena picking up both Big Show and Edge, and that makes that match memorable. Can you remember the finish? No. Can you remember the way it started, the different lockups? Can you remember one hold that they did in that match? No, but you can remember Cena picking up Big Show and Edge at the same time, and I feel like that creates just as big as a moment as a fucking 7.5-star match.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, my first WrestleMania watching live was WrestleMania 15, which is probably one of the worst manias of all time, but it didn't matter to me because you had talk about moments, you had Triple H turn on an X-Pac, which is kind of the most shocking moments of what's DX doing here, I couldn't remember what I mean, or what happened after, but it's that moment of going, whoa, I've never seen that before, or Austin winning the championship. Was that the best match that the Rock and Austin had? No. But in the moment of Vince McMahon on his knees looking at Austin raising the title, it's just magic, Of
course. One of my favourite wrestling matches of all time is SummerSlam 2002, Angle and Mysterio.
What hanger?
A 10-minute match. That's it, just a 10-minute match, and you've got everything thrown into it. I feel like that type of technical wrestling is better than what today's is, because now, I don't want to say it feels choreographed, but it feels choreographed. I don't like how everybody has to be stood in a certain position, and you can kind of tell when something's going to happen. Back then, for example, take someone like Angle, you can see him, doing the amateur wrestling, trying to take someone down to the ground. You can, you're looking into it, and you're like, oh, he's trying to take him down to the ground to do this, he's trying to do that. And you watch something nowadays and you're thinking, well, he's just bent over them ropes just so he can send someone over the top. And, you can kind of see it, whereas back then it felt real, even though you knew it weren't. So everything mattered. A slam would count so much to the match.
Well, that match, that SummerSlam in itself is just brilliant because you've got the Angle Mysterio match to start off, which is it's Angle. You talk about best wrestlers on the planet. Angle in 2002, there was no one better. And you could put him in a match with a mop and he would have had a 5-star match. That's his match. He had a match with Hulk Hogan at King of the Ring, which made Hogan look brilliant, which no one had done in, a year previously. And it's just that whole show itself. And then you look at, you had Shawn Michaels and Triple H, didn't you, in the unsanctioned match, Rock versus Brock in the main event. And you're thinking, wow, look, what SummerSlam, and what have we got this year?
I'm actually looking forward to it this year. I'm really excited for it this year. I feel like it has the potential to be one of the greatest. Obviously, he's going to struggle with the lack of fans, even if they are up on little monitors. He's going to struggle like that. But at the same time, I enjoy the way that they've booked up until SummerSlam this year. There's a bunch of matches that you just think of and just think, what, their story's been all right. It's been pretty interesting. Like your Wyatt and Braun. I feel like the story that they've had there, showing the three faces of Wyatt, has been interesting. I feel like the story of obviously McIntyre and Randy Orton has been fantastic. Them two they've got so much chemistry when they're in the ring together on the mic. I can't wait to see what they're like actually in the ring together. Then you've got the likes of, Bayley and Sasha Banks. They've been absolutely running the show recently. And I've loved every single second of it just because they're like little Karens, really, aren't they?
Yeah. That was big. Right, so what we'll do now, we'll just, for Raw, because Raw has, we've been speaking about it, we're just is it been hit or miss for you? Has Raw been a hit or a miss since COVID? Go on.
Definitely a hit.
I would have to agree with you as well. I think with Raw, it's certainly brought something different. And I think sometimes people will pick anything apart. Even if, like we said, they had Kurt Angle versus Mysterio starting off the show, they would say, oh, they only gave it 10 minutes. Or the Mysterio should have gone over. I think that's the problem.
He's only gone 10 minutes. Just go to AEW instead of in this prison. Come on, man, chill out, like.
It's just like, come on, guys. So definitely worth the 3 hours a week. And I will say something quickly as well. One of the reasons why I started the podcast 5 years ago is because I was listening to other podcasts and they were saying, "Oh, I don't really watch Raw. I don't really watch Smackdown. I don't watch this." If you don't, what's the point of doing a show if you don't know what you're talking about?
Exactly.
You know, if you've not watched Raw, Smackdown, and AEW, NXT, I know it's a lot of time, but that's why I'm single. You know, so I don't mind. All right, so we'll move on to SmackDown then, and we'll start off with Braun Strowman's championship run. What have you thought of his title run since WrestleMania?
Since Mania, I'm a bit 50-50 on it because at first I didn't really... In fact, no. When he won the title, I was really happy. You know, here we go. Braun's finally won the big one. He's finally done it. And then when I started seeing him as champion, I was a bit like, you know, I'm not really feeling it. And now, recently, it's really started to pick up for me, and, you know, he's just shaved his head. And I feel like with a shaved head, he looks great. I feel like he looks like a champion. Right now, I'm really enjoying it, but let's say a month ago, I was probably on the other side of the fence. So I'm a bit 50-50. I feel like he'd have to have more than one title run for me to say how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, he's quite lucky to, like I say, get this championship run, obviously, because of what happened with Roman Reigns. I mean, he got to that level a couple of years ago where it just looked like he was a surefire champion. And they kind of, I don't know if it was a case of just losing steam with him or whatever they did. But I feel with The Fiend, like that character itself, there's so many different layers because he brings out something in his opponents. And we've seen it, you know, with Seth Rollins or, you know, whoever else he's been facing, Finn Balor, that we get another side. And I think Strowman's, it's helping him a lot in this, especially if you to be someone so comfortable with Bray and to know the kind of character they're dealing with. Like I said, it's a kind of perfect storyline leading into SummerSlam, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, of course. I feel like the 3-4 fists of Bray has been fantastic, and I feel like the only person who that had really worked with is Braun. So even if this is literally just a transitional title run for the Fiend to win the title back, I don't mind it. As a title run itself, it's been reasonable. It's been okay. As for keeping me interested, it's taken a while to do that.
Yeah, I think I would agree, but I think like with even the Alexa Bliss kind of element being added to it as well, different layers, and when you can get invested in it and actually the storyline makes sense, I think that's a lot of, you know, a way of going with it. Whereas previously, like with the, you know, the Miz and Morrison, you knew what was going to happen there, and I think that's what we talked about, and what I've, you know, kind of especially. We don't want to know what's going on. We don't want to sit down at a Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view and go, oh, this is what's going to happen. We kind of want to be surprised, but I think sometimes they think, oh, we'll just switch the title because they're not expecting it, rather than giving us something that's really unexpected, you know. And I think that's why the Attitude Era maybe works so well, and other say, like when WWE started happening, you know, with Nitro, you tune in every week and you weren't sure what was going to happen, and I think. Too many times now it's, oh, we know this is what's going to happen here, you know.
I feel like something that they've missed a lot is ending a show on a cliffhanger, and they've started doing that again recently, and that's incredible in my opinion. I love a show that ends on a cliffhanger because it makes you want to watch next week. For example, when The Fiend came after Alexa Bliss, that happened, and the week after, you know, you sat there thinking to yourself, well, what's going to happen? Are we going to get an evil Alexa? Are we going to get an evil Alexa Bliss now? It adds that bit of psychological input to you, where, you know, it's more of a psychological interest, like a mental interest.
I think it's been really, really well done recent times. Like I said, with Braun's title reign at the start, it's not worked. Will he get another chance if he does drop the title? At the moment, who is there at that level that could possibly take on The Fiend after SummerSlam if it's not a straight Braun Strowman rematch? You know, that's going to be slightly interesting.
I wouldn't mind seeing Jeff Hardy go after that with a bit of a character twist. I think he was teasing Willow recently. I might be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure I saw him teasing a bit of Willow. So I think it were the contacts that he has in his eyes. He wore the willow contacts.
But I feel like even like a Firefly Funhouse with Jeff Hardy could, like we've seen with Matt in AEW, like the different changes in his character could be seen throughout the whole thing there, and be done as well as they kind of did with John Cena as well. And someone like Jeff, he's got so much history. I think that would maybe make a little bit of sense, but it's difficult because I think with the Fiend, we want him to be dominant as well, so it's kind of a bit. I don't want 50-50 booking in that way.
In my opinion, this will be how it goes. We'll have the Fiend feud with Jeff Hardy, and then after that, we'll be with Big E. And I feel like if there's one person that will have the chance, it will be Big E, because he's meant to be having his little singles push at the minute. And I feel like once the title's onto that Big E, that's when Otis cash in.
Well, the thing is with what I've said about the Otis cash in, is I think he's going to give the briefcase to Roman Reigns.
Really?
Because I feel like everybody's expecting they've obviously lost confidence in Otis recently with the kind of backlash that they got and stuff like this, and he could either maybe give it to Mandy Rose and her cash in or tag team. But I feel if Otis doesn't feel he's the best man, when Roman returns, he goes, "Here, Roman, here's your opportunity that you missed out on Mania. Go and hit it out the park." And whether that happened the night after SummerSlam or leading up to Survivor Series, I think that would be quite cool for Roman to be like, "Oh, let me take my place on top." He probably won't need that because he'll be put straight back into the main event picture. But I think that would be quite a cool story with Otis saying, "Look, I'm not ready yet," and then build Otis up for a year and say, "Right, let's get me more serious. Let me, get the fans behind me and see what we can do."
At the same time, though, 2 minutes ago, he said that you wouldn't mind him seeing him give it to Mandy Rose. What if he proposed with a briefcase?
But that's what I like about it, because there's so many different opportunities as well. Like with Otis, a standard cash in when he wins the title is just going to have such kind of major backlash, or an unsuccessful cash in will just kill him off.
Well, I have a bit of a controversy for you. I've actually tweeted this once before, and I had a few. Bearing in mind at this point, I probably had about 60 followers.
Yep.
I had a good amount of people telling me that I'm a bit of a bellend for saying. Otis Dozovic could be the next Dusty Rhodes.
Well, as in, okay, so I can see why people, right, because the problem with Twitter is that you put something like that out and then people go, well, he's nothing like Dusty Rhodes, but I assume you're meaning like a son of a plumber, the kind of traditional kind of a guy, a blue chipper that we can look at and go, there's a guy who's more relatable to us than a Randy Orton, and he's kind of got the people behind him, yeah?
Exactly. Literally, Otis literally calls himself, what is it, the working man Otis?
Yeah.
He literally called himself the working man Otis. Obviously, you have the son of a plumber, Dusty Rhodes. Otis has, a bit of build to him. He's a bigger boy. He has his own specific look, and he has a similar look to what Dusty Rhodes had. At the same time, Otis isn't actually terrible on the mic. He's actually really smart. He's a funny character. He's relatable to everybody else because he's a bigger guy. He's someone that he's out of place, kind of. But then he gets on the mic and he can defend that. He can back that up. And then when he's in the ring, again, he can back that up. Obviously, he has his comedy side, but his serious side is a lot better than people take him credit for.
But
and I feel like, obviously not just yet, but through the next couple of years, I think people start to see it, and Otis could be still a big name.
But do you feel, because I think this is my problem, because you hear it from people like Jim Cornette, who I don't really, care what they say, but it's like funny doesn't equal money. And I don't agree with that, because like you said, a comedy character like Santino Marella being champion maybe wouldn't have worked. But at the Rumble, when we thought he was going to eliminate Del Rio, the crowd were so into that point. You can't say they weren't. And I think we've seen it with, talk about Kurt Angle. Look how great Angle was, and he could be as silly as anything and laugh, and you didn't discredit him because of it.
I think the thing with Kurt Angle though is, despite how goofy he was a legitimate athlete. That's something else I feel like missing, especially from your Smackdown. I've always seen Raw as your wacky soap opera show, and then Smackdown as your your classic wrestling show on SmackDown. I want to see people wearing, tracksuits and stuff. I don't want to see them wearing merch backstage in full ring attire, like full ring gear. I want to see them wearing like tracksuits and like gym clothes, as if they've just had a session. If they're not on the show, then they're doing a session in the gym. I want to see them like in sports gear. And I feel like when Kurt Angle were doing that back then, he felt like a big deal. There were a clip with him, like a segment between him and Brock Lesnar, where they were trying to see how many press ups they could do. That is stupid. It's funny, but it makes them look credible.
I think with Kurt Angle,
that's the thing with Angle. Like, even though I have a lot to say about Jim Cornette, and I'm not actually someone that disagrees with everything he says, because I actually think a lot of points he makes is true. I understand his point of view. I understand where he gets these. Obviously, I think he can be a bit of an idiot, let's say, because of the racism and everything that follows on from there. But the points that Jim Cornette makes isn't always wrong, and it's hard to say without me seeming like a big Cornette head. Cornette's an old head. He's a boomer. He's a wrestling boomer. He comes from the territorial days. You think even back in the Attitude Era, we bring in the NWA guys, the classic wrestlers. He was a wrestling fan, and you can always tell like he cares about wrestling, and I feel like that's why he's so passionate with what he says. That's why he gets so pissed off when he sees something stupid, because he doesn't like the movement that wrestling is now. He doesn't like the transition that it's become. He's still got that old mentality, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I feel like NWA, how that is now, like that's a fantastic show. People love that. Edge and Orton from Backlash, people love that. I think there needs to be more of it, and Jim Cornette expresses that. I just feel like maybe he goes around it the wrong way.
Well, I think with Cornette, he just wants to go back to Smoky Valley wrestling days of the kind of what it was, which is like I said, the thing with wrestling is that it's open to having that style along with everything else. You know? So I think with that, I enjoy a technical match as much as kind of the high flying guys. And that said, I get annoyed when Will Ospreay and Ricochet get called like kind of flippy wrestlers, because for me it's about a story they tell in the ring, and that's what I'm more in with that. And I feel with with funny equals money. It's like we see it with Mick Foley when he kind of managed, became the commissioner. I think he had so much more fun with that as opposed to what he was kind of doing before. And I'm hoping, and to show a little bit, it's like McIntyre or Big E. Like Big E on Twitter is hilarious. He's so funny, and the stuff he does with the New Day is silly, and the same with McIntyre being goofy. But it doesn't mean that you're an idiot because you're funny. It's just an added layer,
Of course. I agree with that. I feel like there's so many people that they don't have character, but they have a little bit of personality. And I feel like when you have a bit of a funny background, it kind of adds to that character rather than just a personality. Like Ricochet is just a personality. Cedric Alexander is just a personality. I feel like there needs to be more characters. I'm not saying that everybody has to have a gimmick, but everybody has to have a character. They have to have something about them, explain why they're there, and that's, in my opinion, probably the biggest problem.
Yeah, you need a reason. If you haven't got a reason to be around, then you are just filling space at that point. If your goal is to become the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, that's fine, but that's what you should be saying to everybody. Do you know what I mean? Or being the best tag team that ever was. When's the last time a tag team's come out and said we want to be as big as Road Warriors or the Dudleys? That kind of doesn't happen. So when it comes to maybe with WWE more than anything else, but I think with a lot of other wrestling promotions, you got your storyline. Very famously, McMahon was saying like 10 years ago, he just focused on what John Cena was doing. He doesn't really care about what any other guys are doing. And I feel like you've got your 6 guys in WWE who have probably got long-term storylines, and then everything else is just up in the air,
What are your opinions on what Rollins said recently when he said that fans aren't patient enough for long-term storybooking? Because I agree with it. I'm 100% standing by that point.
I do agree in a way. I think Seth Rollins he is the kind of WWE, I don't want to say figurehead at the moment, but he said a lot of stuff, on Twitter and to make comments protecting WWE, which is understandable. That's fine. I think if there is long-term planning to matches, then by all means it needs a payoff. But how many long-term build-ups or payoffs have we seen in recent times? Like the Dominic one, is he just talking about because Mysterio's going to return? But what other ones have we seen with that? Hopefully he's talking about Buddy Murphy turning on him at some point, because I think Murphy's a guy who has maybe personality lacking a little bit, but is just so talented,
In my opinion, Buddy Murphy is WWE's answer to Kenny Omega. I honestly think he's that good. You gave him a half an hour match, and he will have the best match on the card.
Yeah, and I think hopefully, if they can turn him on Rollins, because we've seen a little bit with Murphy not being happy, has he? And hopefully they can. If Rollins talk about that, if they just kind of end the storyline at SummerSlam, then I think fans have got a point, because they do get frustrated because they want a story to kind of make sense throughout time. I know there's a lot of negative, but I think most people watching Raw SmackDown want to be rewarded for their loyalty, so to speak.
I can agree with that. At the same time, I also have to say, though, that I don't mind wacky storylines whatsoever. Like Montez Ford getting poisoned, I sat there and I pissed myself laughing. It's hilarious. It's stupid things. Like, were anybody complaining when Eddie Guerrero decided to poison the Big Show's burrito?
Oh yeah,
were anybody complaining then, or were everybody laughing? Everyone was laughing. It was funny. It's stupid stuff. If you're gonna have someone like Orton and McIntyre have this big serious story on Raw, and then a bit further down the card, you've got Rollins' stable. I always call them the Monarchy. So if you ever hear me say the Monarchy, then you've got the Monarchy, who were, this dead serious faction with Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio. I don't care how stupid that were about taking Ray's eye out. I thought, again, that was piss funny. A ping pong ball to Ray's actual eyeball. I do not care. Story-wise, in kayfabe, his eyeball came out, so I'm gonna live with that. I'm gonna go with that. That's hilarious. It's stupid, but they made it serious, and with some Samoa Joe on commentary, anything that is meant to be serious kind of becomes serious.
That's what I felt. I feel you need someone on commentary to kind of, like I say, like a Bobby Heenan type to make a little bit of a joke about it, so it's fans or people watching know, because otherwise it's kind of like the stretcher, when someone gets wheeled out. How many times have we seen that, and how many times doesn't it get reaction because you're going, oh, we've seen this 100 times so we know it's not real.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a slight problem as well,
On Raw, I want to see Corey Graves and Tom Phillips, because on NXT, in their NXT days, they were fantastic together. Tom Phillips were a nice little babyface. Corey Graves were an arsehole heel. And then on SmackDown, I want to see Michael Cole and Samoa Joe.
Yeah, I think Joe has kind of settled in so much.
He's the best commentator they've got right now.
Yeah.
Besides, obviously, your Mauro Ranallo and Nigel McGuinness and stuff.
Nigel McGuinness is one of these guys. I mean, we did a special about Nigel McGuinness early on in the year, just about his wrestling career, but he's a guy that I would have either on Raw or SmackDown, because he's just so knowledgeable, but doesn't. You're with him with it. And I think that's what a great commentator is when you're along for the ride, and it's like JR back in the day with a kind of emotion, but when he was emotional, you bought into it because it showed that he cared.
Yeah, of course. I've actually met Nigel McGuinness.
Was he a nice guy?
I didn't really get enough from him. So William Regal had a show in Blackpool that was like a meet and greet, and he'd sit there and he'd tell you a story. It actually got recorded for the network. And they had like a first half of the show where you'd sit there and you'd listen to his story, and then the second half of the show were Q&A. And like I said, it's going to be on the network. The Q&A, it was maybe a 1 hour special, and there were one question throughout the entire thing. And do you know the British wrestling legend Marty Jones?
Yes.
Well, a member of Graps of Wrath actually got trained by him a few years ago, and he was at this event. So obviously everybody went over. There were me, him, and his brother, and we'd gone over and we were speaking to Marty Jones, and he was sat there saying, "Oh, how you doing?" And he got his front row seat, so he sat down in the front row, and Cam, his brother, who was sat with us, had that one question, and the entire hour of that Q&A was based on the three of us
so the camera were constantly on us.
Bloody
And
hell.
it'll be on the network soon, they were saying, so that'll be interesting. So, you know, a nice little plug there. But they had like a half time in the middle of it, and we met a bunch of guys. So we met Jeremy Borash, Chris Hero, or Cassie Sono.
Yep.
V. Brian Kendrick. Who were they? We saw Zach Gibson and James Drake at the start of the show. We saw Viper, and we saw Nigel McGuinness, and he was, you know, doing some, you know, like magic card tricks. And he told us he was going to be at the end of the show, take a photo, say hello to us, sit down, and chill out. And yeah, he never showed up.
No,
so I hold a grudge against Nigel McGuinness.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's what
he seemed like a nice guy.
But there's some people. I mean, this is another thing is talking about wrestling and going out and interacting with different wrestlers and stuff like that. I had to start the podcast off, I used to listen to the Art of Wrestling with Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
And I was desperate, and he was doing a show locally, and I went there and I was starstruck. You know, this is about 8 years ago now. And I didn't want to speak to him. My friend was there and he put his hand on his shoulder and I was just like, oh my God, what are you doing? That is Colt Cabana, you know. And I went over and spoke to him and it was just, it was just disappointing to be, yeah, it's just, there's like McIntyre was one of the nicest guys ever. We met Ricochet at that same event that Colt Cabana was at, and it was night and day, you know, like, Ricochet was just one of the coolest guys, and we actually chatted to him. You know, we were at the bar. You know, after his match, he was just there mingling, and just such a down to earth guy. And I think when you go out and you meet these guys, you know, like I said, it's great to go see an event, but it's even better to like either a local wrestling event before they've made it big, or like one of these Q&As where you get a chance. It's just great to actually meet people and, you know, to be a part of it. You feel more of a part of it as well, don't you?
Yeah, of course. Well, I also met Edge, and Edge is probably my favourite person I've ever met. Yeah, he was a really nice guy, and Regal were fantastic. When we went to go and talk to Regal, it was completely different to the Edge experience. When we met Edge, you know, he'd sit there and he talked to us for a few minutes, and, you know, he'd ask us how we were, what we were up to after the show. He'd take a photo, sign our stuff. Regal, however, he must have sat there and talked to me for about 15 minutes. This massive long queue of people waiting. I think I was the third person in the queue ready to go and see him, and he must have spent about 15 minutes of talking to me about I have an injury with my shoulder, and he sat there talking to me about my shoulder, and he was talking about you know, his experience when he dislocated his shoulder and surgeries that he had, and, you know, the rehab he went through. And he's a really nice guy. He just sat there and he just spoke for ages. And Brian Kendrick were another guy. Kendrick and Chris Hero sat like together, and we spoke to them separately, and Chris Hero just sat there and he had a load of jokes. He was sat there talking about matches that he'd had with Marty Scurll, you know, hero versus villain.
Yeah.
He was talking to us about that quite a lot.
Well, I'll tell you that Marty Scurll, we managed, because like I said, it was Rev Pro before they actually became big. So, you know, in that way. So you had people like, because I didn't know who they were. So you had Marty Scurll, Will Ospreay, and people like this. And, you know, I met Marty Scurll and I'm thinking, oh, he's quite a nice guy, but I'm not really sure. And I think that's why I keep telling people, go to your independent shows, because you don't know stars of the future are going to be. It could be anybody you could meet. But it's lovely to hear about an experience from someone like William Regal. And what we tried to do on the podcast is we were focusing on British wrestling this year. So we had a Nigel McGuinness special, we had the William Regal special, and next year we're going to kind of look at the guys who are behind, not even behind the scenes, but maybe people don't know. You know, people like Robbie Brookside and people like that, who have had such a huge impact on British wrestling, but probably don't really get the credit. Anyway, let's bring it back to SmackDown, and let's talk about we'll talk about the women's division on SmackDown in WWE as a whole. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on the women's division is that the women have more character development than any of the guys. I think it's a very strong division and the best I've ever had. I really like the women's division.
I couldn't agree more.
Your top women's stars all the way to the bottom. From the top women's stars all the way to the bottom, they're fantastic. You
look at them, even people who are not through like Ember Moon, who have got so much character and drive about them. You know, like I said, every single character from either like Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, have been hitting out of the park recently. You know, you've got characters that are not in use that have got still, like someone like Carmella or Naomi, who know exactly what they're about, but just haven't got the time to be kind of used at this moment. And then, of course, heading the division, because after, of course, Lynch and Charlotte, people are going, oh, what's going to happen? And then Banks and Bailey are going, you know what? Let's step up. And it's just been phenomenal for them this year, you know?
It's been brilliant. I actually think, is it Payback? It is not pay-per-view, isn't it? I always forget the name of it. The one after SummerSlam, the week after SummerSlam.
It's going to be Payback, yeah.
Payback, yeah, definitely Payback. I think that would just be a full women's pay-per-view, just like Evolution.
Well, I think it needs to be, because Evolution was on my birthday a couple of years ago, and it's one of the greatest pay-per-views that there has been in years, just because of how great the women's division is. It's the strongest thing, even in NXT. It's the strongest thing in WWE nowadays. I really do believe that, you know?
It really is. It's definitely up there. I feel like they can main event shows when they haven't. I feel like there is an equality now. Obviously, there's not as many women's feuds, but that's because it's a division. And in my opinion, the only way that they're going to get more feuds is to have an all-women's show weekly. But I'm kind of against that idea anyway.
Well, we see it with 205 Live with the kind of cruiserweight devoted show. It never really worked, and my problem with that is the women's show would be, an hour after Raw, wherever it is, tucked away, and no one would really know about it. And I feel like we talked about it earlier. I feel with like an hour of Raw, if you've got 3 hours, we'll have the first hour dedicated to just women, but you don't even need that now because they can be in the main events. They can carry segments through the whole show, and I think that's especially with Bailey and Banks, it's what they know about their own characters. That's why it's working so well at this moment in time.
I suppose one way of looking at things could be maybe having all the women on Raw, all the cruiserweights on SmackDown to make it a little bit different. On Raw, then you're going to see more women. On cruiserweights, you're going to see more flippy shit. But on Raw, when you've got the women, you can have more women's tag teams rather than just everyone's a single star. Like at the minute, we're 3 women's tag teams.
Yeah.
You can start putting people together, you can start partnering people together, and it creates more character development anyway. Then I feel like it would. Well, I know there's a lot of women, but there's not many tag teams right now, so especially on the main roster. So you can start putting people together, and I don't know. I feel like it could work. I'd have to look into it a little bit more, but off the top of my head, that sounds like it could work.
But the thing is, though, it's like the Iconics, and even now there's rumours about them splitting them up, and I just think they're such a great tag team. And like I said, you can build the women's tag team division around them and start from a core, because we know, like I said, 3 or 4 great tag teams can build a division. We've seen it in the past, with other, and then other tag teams get added to that, and it builds more. You look at even Edge and Christian, the Hardys and the Dudleys. When it was the Outlaws, they were kind of dominant, and then these 3 teams came along, and then they added stuff to that. And I think the women's division is a shining light at the moment in WWE.
Of course, it's special. It's something that makes them stand out over everything else, in my opinion. That's something that they should be really proud of.
All right, so that is definitely a hit. So next question: does WWE hate tag teams?
No. No, I don't think they do. I understand why people say that. Of course I do. Tag team wrestling is my favourite type of wrestling. It has been now for probably about 4 years. It's fantastic. People say that because it's not where it should be. But at the same time, you look at, for example, the feud that they had with the New Day and the Usos. In my opinion, fantastic. Mm-hmm. The Lucha House Party have been absolutely brilliant, even though they're not high up on the card. And, not even many people enjoy watching them at the minute. But they've really started coming out the chair. I feel like when it comes to tag team wrestling, we're in a transitional stage where we've not got any great tag teams besides the New Day. It just takes a while for them to build, and I feel like the Street Profits will be hitting that eventually. Heavy Machinery are always going to be in the middle of the division.
Well, I think the tag teams, I feel like sometimes we'll try and build a tag team division, and then we'll just put 2 single guys with each other and hold the tag belts for a while. And I think we've seen that past few years with WWE where, and I've always argued this because I love tag team wrestling as well. I feel a great tag team beats two great singles wrestlers. Simple.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. I feel like it's a division for a reason. If a tag team should come in as a specialist, like they should be tag team specialists, rather than just a tag team. You know, I want them to be called specialists. I want that division to be called special. I want it to be pushed as a specialist division. It's like
matching outfits.
You know? That's what I mean. Like, what's it called? The cruiserweights can only be a cruiserweight. Their height and stuff that they do in the ring, you know, they're specialists to that division. A super heavyweight division or a power division, you know, they're specialists because of their size, because of their strength. When it comes to tag teams, I want to see them say, like, you know, they've been training to be a tag team their entire life. They've been training to be a tag team through their entire WWE run. I want them to be called specialists. They've been working on tag team wrestling. They haven't been working on solo wrestling. There's a different vibe to tag team wrestling than there is to singles wrestling. And I feel like that's important. Like, it should be stated more. And when it does, I feel like people look at it a bit more specially. Like, you know, oh, you know what? Fair play. Not many people can do that. And yeah, I think that's what makes the likes of the Usos stand out more.
What are your thoughts on like Cesaro and Nakamura teaming up? Is that again a case of two individuals, or because they've been under the kind of Sami Zayn barrier? Is that acceptable in that way? You know,
in my opinion, you can look at it two ways. I think they've both been put together just for the sake of it, because they're internationals and Sami Zayn's a bit political. That's just my opinion. But Cesaro's one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time, and Nakamura's Japanese. The New Japan culture is to have a lot of tag team matches running the start of the show anyway, because it's to look after stars. So I feel like Nakamura's fine in a tag team role either way. I'd prefer to see him as a solo guy because I think he would do well, but at the same time, I don't think he really fits a weekly schedule.
But this is the thing, and I think that's with Nakamura, and we don't have it a lot. It's how are you going to miss me if I'm never gone? You know, I think Cornette said that. It's a case of, with some stars, the reason why Lesnar works so well, or doesn't in other person's point of view, is because he's not on every week. He doesn't get rammed down your throat. And it's like Seth Rollins' title run last year. Because he was there every week, there's nothing kind of special. It's like Aleister Black. If he was showing up every couple of weeks and just someone with a black mask kick and then disappearing again, it would add a bit of mystique. It's the same with Nakamura. Of when he was in NXT, they booked him perfectly, you know?
There'll never be a greater Nakamura entrance than his debut entrance, and I want to see that back. I don't want to see the weird lights when he comes out. I want to see it proper flashing when he comes out. I want to see people, you know, have to be warned at the start of the show with the epilepsy. So I really want to see his entrance as this spectacular thing. You know, he gets halfway down the ramp and he's doing his little hand movement, and that's when the light shines on him.
I'll tell you what, I'll take an epileptic fit to get that entrance back. Yeah.
Honestly, it's his entrance was spectacular. I want to, you know, put the one up at the start of the show and have him do this big entrance. He'll get over if he does that just once.
Well, we've seen it with, you know, Bobby Roode in the entrance in NXT, how he was treated, and then moved up, and it was, he's just an entrance. You kind of need to build more on that. And I think with Nakamura and Cesaro, they're under the same thing.
They need to. This might just be me, but I obviously I don't know the guy, but when I look at Nakamura, I see someone who's a bit lazy, and you know it's a harsh thing to say, but you know I really enjoy Sheamus's YouTube channel where, you know, the Celtic workouts. Yeah. I love watching them because you know, I'm training to be a PT. I love sports. I love watching people train, and I'm watching Sheamus do all these different types of training with different types of people. And I watched Nakamura's, and Nakamura were giving up halfway through half of his stuff, and you know he hasn't got good form, which just kind of shows like, maybe he's not quite done that as many times as other people have. And you know, obviously I'm just
I mean,
normal person would do.
This is the thing with Nakamura, and after a while, winning the Rumble and then losing at WrestleMania and then thinking to himself, well, I'm probably not going to be champion. Is there a little bit of, not laziness that comes in, but I've got my spot on the card and they're not going to use me any higher, so I'll just run through the motions. One wrestler always springs to mind about that is RVD. Because RVD, when he first debuted, especially in WWF back in the day, his shit was amazing. Like the matches with Jeff Hardy, and I thought this guy is incredible. And then in like 2003, it's just like the same moves every match, and there was nothing. He didn't do anything else. It was just these are my moves that I'm doing, and I'll still do my the stuff you like the frog splash and the kind of RVD. But I'm not going to give everything because they're not going to use me. Is that maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I feel with Nakamura maybe.
Possibly, but I feel like with RVD, he was just cool with the stuff that he did anyway. I feel like it was all about saving his body at that point.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair point to say as well. I mean, like I said, he did get his run, the WWE title run in the end, and of course, that ended the way it did. But I think with some wrestlers, maybe it's the risk of putting the title on them and seeing what happens sometimes, and I think maybe WWE might be worried about that at certain points, especially with Braun and McIntyre as new champions. Maybe give someone like, Cesaro. Well, Cesaro definitely needs a chance, there's no doubt. But someone like Nakamura, or even the Kevin Owens the second run, I would agree. Definitely, it's personality with him as well. And I'm just looking at, of course, the last pay-per-view WWE did was Extreme Rules. Just looking through the card, of course, Bray Wyatt beat Braun Strowman in the main event. McIntyre defeated Ziggler. Oscar versus Sasha Banks ended in a no contest. What did you think of this shenanigans, as they were Extreme Rules, with the Oscar and Banks? Obviously, what happened there, and we've already spoken about Rollins and Mysterio. I know you dug that, but what did you think of the Oscar and Sasha Banks thing at Extreme Rules?
The Oscar and Banks thing, I didn't mind. I thought it were a bit weird, but they explained it and they went with it, if that makes sense. It were a different type of ending, and apparently things changed last minute, so it's a finish that came up on the fly. I didn't mind it because they built on it, because they played on that, and it followed on. If they did that and then that were it, Banks is the winner. Banks has got the she's the new champion. I'd be a bit, hey, really? That's not how it worked. But no, they followed up in it and they said, no, she isn't the champion. She's just saying she is. And I like that. It fit their character. It fit the mold of, Banks and Bailey's persona right now. I enjoyed it. It weren't bad. I never watched it and thought, this is weird, this is shit. I watched it and thought, fair play if they actually work on it. Fair play if they follow up from it, and they did.
Well, as I said, it was a bit of a surprise with Banks actually winning the championship with a count out afterwards, and it looks, with Oscar winning the Battle Royal on Smackdown, looks like it's going to get a rematch at SummerSlam as well. But Oscar is another one of those who for me personally, when people know, who's your top 5 or on the roster, Oscar would be most people, without.
She's not mine personally, but I very much understand why she's a lot of people's. She's fucking phenomenal. Let's put it this way: when Oscar first signed to NXT, I was not an Oscar fan whatsoever. I absolutely hated her. I never understood anything about her, and as time got on, I became a fan, and then I became more of a fan, and then I became more of a fan, and then more, and now she's where she is. She can't do anything wrong, can she? She's a saint.
She's just like the. I always said it about Sasha Banks of like, her style, she fights like a man. But with Oscar, I would back her against most guys. Do you know what I mean? And I think with that, and it's just her style and the kind of the character as well, especially with kind of being, she's Japanese. So there's so much personality she gives without speaking sometimes as well. And I think that's what's brilliant. And I think it's great that she's had. People were moaning when, don't get me wrong, I was devastated when she lost to Charlotte at WrestleMania. But I feel, looking back, talk about building stars, with Oscar, she is up there now with success alongside the 4 horsewomen, I think without a doubt.
Of course, I would just want to say then something that makes Oscar so great, in my opinion, is how she came back from the loss of, this massive undefeated streak. The fact that she managed to come back from it, she's still like, a lot of people's top women's wrestler at the minute. Like, that's impressive to do when you a lot of people considered her to be buried. I don't agree with that statement whatsoever, but a lot of people looked at her as buried. A lot of people looked at her as, I has been, she's finally lost now, so that means that she lose more and nothing's going to change now. She's not going to be the same, but no, she came back just like I thought she would do, and she was fantastic. I actually think that the match with Charlotte needs another 10 because it's one of my favourite women's matches of all time. In my opinion, it's probably the best on that entire Mania card. It was that good. It were a fantastic. I actually think Charlotte's the best woman wrestler in the world now. She's out injured, but I would sit there and I'd fight that argument all day. I really, really do. I can explain to you for 45 minutes why she don't get the credit she deserves, and I like her and fixing it up really stand well together. They really have a lot of chemistry.
Well, when Charlotte, sorry to, but I was about to say with the Charlotte thing, like for so many years, or it seemed for so long, I just either thought she was overrated, or there was just something about her I didn't like. And then I look back on like the last 2 years, and there is not. This is to lead to your argument as well. There is not one wrestler in big match situations who's delivered more than Charlotte has. There is not another wrestler. There's not one.
People hate on Charlotte because she's overbooked, but does overbooked mean underrated? No, it doesn't.
No.
There's a big difference.
Like I said, you look at a match at WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley. It was a fantastic match. Every match she's put in, where it would be even going back to Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series, every match she's in, she delivers, and that's why she's put in a position on the card, because she does deliver every time. And people get annoyed, but you can't argue.
Of course. She delivers every time. She's a fantastic wrestler, in my opinion. Like I said before, greatest on the planet. I feel like she'll reach the heights of Flair, of Ric Flair. She'll pass the likes of Trish Stratus and Lita. I feel like she's already quite past Lita. I don't think she's quite past Trish yet as an all-time great. But that's just because Trish will look. A lot of people look at Trish as like a nostalgia. She's nostalgic.
I think with Trish, it was a case of she came in as a model and decided to take it seriously. And I think she earned not only respect of all the fans and all the people backstage, but all the wrestlers, and she proved everybody wrong. And I think with Trish, we didn't have anything like that. Like I said, in my time watching the Attitude Era when I was a kid, bra and panties matches and chocolate pudding bowls and this stuff. And then we saw it a little bit with Trish. And in Victoria, to her credit as well, during that time, Molly Holly. And then, like you said, the revolution since then has been, like I say, when we first started watching started doing a podcast to where we are like now with women's division, it's been the most enjoyable thing to see,
Yeah, of course. I feel like women's wrestling now can only get better. Will the main event Mania again? Probably, yeah, at some point. Do I want it? And do I want to see it next year? No, but that's nothing against the women's revolution right now. I kind of want to see Evolution be the women's WrestleMania. Obviously, they still have matches on the Mania card, but I want to see them have Evolution specifically as a Mania styled pay-per-view for the women only. I feel like they've really earned that now.
Yeah, I think without doubt, and I do believe that if Lynch and Rousey one-on-one, that could main event WrestleMania again. I think that's
of course. Definitely. I feel like maybe even Becky and Charlotte again. I even think, in fact, I could sit here and actually admit that I'd love to see Charlotte main event the next 10 Evolution pay-per-views. I honestly think she's that good. That's just me being like tight and maybe a bit of a troll, but I think she's that good.
No, I mean that's brilliant. Like I said, it's when it comes to it, it's because for so long women weren't, the wrestling as well wasn't taken seriously, and to actually have a serious debate about it is just, like I said, just shows how much has really changed.
Definitely.
So anyway, Raw and SmackDown, we spoke about both. That was the state of the WWE. Of course, obviously, in a couple of weeks' time, we will do part 2 where we look at AEW, NXT, and a few other wrestling promotions. But So, I mean, like I said, it's been brilliant to have you on board. SmackDown, for you, is it a hit or miss?
Again, it's a hit, but only just a hit. I feel like it had a bit of a dip, like maybe the last 3 or 4 weeks. Not the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's been interesting the last 3 or 4 weeks, but at the start of the pandemic and maybe halfway through the pandemic, I feel like it did take a bit of a dip. It's been up and down, but it's back up to the best it can be. For me, it's a hit, especially after the last night show. Last night show was good.
Do you think SummerSlam, though, is a moment in time? If things go wrong at SummerSlam with maybe some decisions, that WWE are going to struggle up until the new year? Or do you feel with SummerSlam, irrespective of what happens there, they're going to carry on this kind of runner form?
I think it's going to carry on with the way it is. I feel like, especially with like someone like Retribution around and Raw Underground kicking up. I know that's a lot of Raw-based stuff when we're talking about SmackDown, but with that kind of stuff around at the minute, it's kind of pushing a new direction for the company. It's kind of pushing a new direction for the talent on both rosters on NXT as well. It's different, it's fresh, and I feel like the only way that they can go with it is forward.
I think without a doubt, and I think that's brilliant. So that is hit or miss for Raw and SmackDown, like we'll be doing in a couple of weeks' time. I just want to take a moment and look at a wrestler who tragically passed away this week, Kamala. Now, my first wrestling memory of Undertaker building a coffin for Kamala, leading to the eventual match at Survivor Series 1992. I always remember Undertaker go, Kamala, and it's me now for as long as it has been. The Ugandan Giant was born James Harris on May 28th, 1950 in Mississippi. He debuted in 1978 under the ring name Sugar Bear Harris. He spent most of his early career in the southern United States, also using the ring names Ugly Bear Harris and Big Jim Harris. His first manager was Percy Pringle, a.k.a. Paul Bearer. He got his start in USWA, where Jerry King Lawyer wanted a new character and he adjusted it. Basically looked like a Ugandan headhunter with face and body paint. And of course, he's more famous for his time in WWF as well, early on with Andre the Giant, and like we said, later on against the kind of Undertaker and people like this. And people might forget as well, he was also in WCW in his later days, thanks to Hulk Hogan, and he joined the Dungeon of Doom. Now, no one's ever seen the Dungeon of Doom. They are the greatest wrestling group that ever existed. I personally love WCW in 1995 because it is just hilarious. Not intentional, but it is just brilliant, you know. And obviously later on in his career as well, he had his left leg amputated in 2011, and on 2020 he tested positive for COVID and was hospitalised. And unfortunately, due to complications from diabetes, he passed away at the age of 70. R.I.P. Kamala, you will be missed 1950 to 2020. Very sad news about Kamala this week, obviously.
He's a legend of the business. I mean, I was too young to ever really understand who he was as a character, but like, when I've grown up, I've been able to see different clips of him. I've been able to see like the character work of him, and you know, his input on today's business, and I feel like he's a revolutionary. It's a shame. It's a real shame.
Yeah, he will definitely be missed. And even the moment when Regal's saying to him, "No, I will not rub the moon on your belly," still has me laughing now. Like I said, Kamala, you will be missed. So that is it. That's been a brilliant show. Like I say, the first ever co-host, first special guest co-host on the podcast. And I'll tell you what, I have really enjoyed it. I'll tell you what, 2 hours have flown by today. They really have.
They really have.
Yeah, I mean,
I've had my girlfriend messaging me halfway through saying, "How long are you going to be? I want to go out."
Well, I will let you go out now, but I will ask if I can see you again in 2 weeks.
Of course.
Brilliant. That is it. Don't forget, we're across all social media. Twitter at the WNR Podcast. I'm at the WNRJR. And where are you?
I am at Wraps of Grass.
Yeah. So make sure you follow him on there. All right. It's a really good Twitter account. Like we said, we're going to build it up as well and try and get a lot of support over there. Our WNR follower of the week is Gustavo Tivo at Gustavo Tivo 1002. He'll be able to pick something on the podcast. We're also on Facebook, the WNR Podcast, and also Instagram. Across all the Google platforms, send us an email to WNRpodcast@gmail.com. YouTube, and we have all the latest clips and podcasts got the same time on YouTube as do SoundCloud on your phone, Also, Stitcher and iTunes, where you can download, subscribe, rate, and review there. So that is it. I have been James Ronans, and I was joined by
the Raps of Grass.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and bye.